Hey guys, what is up? It's Monk Zonky, so welcome to the second episode of the Alaric campaign. Now, in case you haven't noticed yet, this is not live commentary. I actually decided, well, wasn't really deciding, it more the game forced my hand. The audio did not save when I initially recorded this. I did live commentate the whole thing, so I decided what I would do instead is kind of do a post-commentary edited thing, and this way I get to cut out a lot of the more boring stuff, like most of my economy building I cut out, and most of the dead times between fighting sequences I cut out, so I'm really just focusing on the action in this scenario. So if you wouldn't mind in the comments, let me know, would you rather see a shorter video and you wouldn't get as much like live reaction stuff, so the commentary might not be quite as exciting, however you also get to, you know, not see as many of the just boring me building villagers and assigning them to stuff, and also since I've already done this scenario, when I'm actually commentating I can maybe provide some more tips and stuff and have a general better idea of actually what's going on. So I mean, both have their pros and cons. Just let me know which one you'd rather see, and it probably depends by the person, but I know I personally would be the kind of person, if I was watching a YouTube video, I would much rather see the shorter one when the person can provide better tips and stuff, but might not have like the live reactions and all that. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into this. So what happens is there's some Romans and they're kind of hanging out here, and I guess you're pretty far away from Rome at this point. The Goths have retreated because there are no Romans. They're surprised that there's Romans around. They apparently made a peace treaty with the Romans, said, okay guys, we won't attack each other, and now the Romans are sending a force, a special strike force, after the Goths to kill them. And the Goths feel betrayed by this, so they kind of have a good idea that they're going to destroy the Roman strike force. So the first thing that I realized is I played this mission one time and I failed, like right at the very start. If you go over to the left of where my scout cavalry is going, there's like some archers there, and they can kind of kill you quite fast because there's about 3 or 4 of them all clumped up in one little area. And if you run into them with your little light cavalry that only has, I'm not sure if it has 2 pierce armor or 2 arrow armor, but one of those two. Anyway, it has 2 armor, and the archers do like 6 damage or something, so it dies quite fast. So now you just go to the second village, and it's like, hey, the Romans are here. So now it's time to start building up a force, and unlike the first scenario, you actually have control of your own army in this scenario, which I much prefer. I really don't like having to work with units that the game provides to you and not being able to build any more units. So I found this scenario a lot more enjoyable, although it was pretty easy, although I was playing on the standard difficulty. So I kind of go overkill in this scenario with the amount of troops I make. You can get away with making way less troops than I do. And one thing is, there's not really a whole lot of resources on this map in terms of like gold and stone, which is not necessarily a bad thing because you don't really need that much, but my strategy was to go with knights, and you'll see basically what I did as I get into it, but I mostly went with knights and skirmishers. Knights and skirmishers are a really nice combination because the only thing that knights are really weak to, at least when it comes to castle age units, is pikemen and I guess camels as well, but there's no camels in this scenario. So the skirmishers deal with the pikemen pretty well, and they also deal with camels surprisingly well, at least for how cheap they are, because camels have like no pierce armor, so arrows just kind of tear through camels. And even though skirmishers do pretty low damage to anything that's not archer related, they can hit camels a decent amount. That's why I think, at least if you're raiding in the castle age, if you're going to make some knights, you definitely want to back them up with some skirmishers. And skirmishers do have an attack bonus against pikemen. Even though they're technically an infantry unit, you wouldn't think that they'd be weak to really low damage archer, but they are, because the skirmishers have an attack bonus. I'm not sure if it's like 2 times damage or 1.5 times damage or what it is, but they tear through pikemen quite easily. So now is the part where I just start building up my economy. I'm not really going to show very much of this. It's going to be very little that I actually show building up the economy. Really, all I did was I just assigned a bunch of villagers to wood, and I built a bunch of farms. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's fairly self-explanatory. It shouldn't be too hard to figure out exactly how you do that. There's a few forage bushes as well that you can assign villagers to. Now we'll just skip ahead. I'll skip ahead several times. That was the first skip, and that was also the longest clip of this entire video. But hopefully this skips cut out a lot of the boring economy building and stuff like that. I am also in the castle age at this point. I went up to the castle age pretty early just because I'm really not sure why, because I only stuck with the one town center. so it probably would have been a wiser idea to build up my economy a little bit more before I headed up to the castle age, and you'd probably get this scenario done a little bit quicker, but it's not like you're going to lose unless you are playing on hard difficulty. On hard difficulty, you'll get raided with some longswordsmen and knights and skirmishers, although you do get raided on the standard or moderate difficulty too, but the raids come much later on those difficulties. So pretty much what you can do is you can just make a couple of skirmishers and a couple of pikemen. You'll be completely fine. Even feudal age units work okay, I guess. They're not the greatest thing in the world, but they do the job. I started mining stone pretty early as well because I wanted a castle. I'm not really sure why I wanted a castle because I didn't really end up using it to make Huskarls. Huskarls are a really powerful unit. They're near invulnerable against archers, at least as invulnerable as you can get in this game. With Huskarls with some infantry armor upgrades, they really don't take much damage from arrows at all. They can even take down castles fairly effectively, and you do fight a castle later in this scenario. So Huskarls might be a good choice to go with if you don't want to make knights, but you don't get a whole lot of gold, and you can't really trade with anyone either. You might be able to trade with that neutral market now that I think of it, if you really wanted to, but there's really not that much point. The 5 gold mines, 6 gold mines or whatever you get, that should be plenty for this scenario. So now I'm just starting to put up some military buildings, and again, mostly going with like archery ranges here. You already come with the stable and barracks. You don't really need the build any more stable and barracks because again, you won't be really producing a large army. I believe the population limit of this scenario is 200, so if you want to go all in with like a huge economy of villagers, you can. It's just not necessary at all. And that scout dies. I cut away just before he dies, but take my word for it, he gets KO'd there. And I didn't want to show his death on camera, so I skipped over that. And this is where I start producing some army. Again, I am in the castle age. I go with the blacksmith upgrades. I fully upgraded everything that you can, at least castle age wise. You are restricted to the castle age in this scenario. But knights and archers got all the upgrades. I eventually get the infantry upgrades later at the very end of the scenario. I create a little bit of pikemen and a few huskarls as well, but they're not necessary. You don't need a big varied army composition. Another thing that I would recommend is at this point you probably want to build a siege workshop and create a couple rams. I didn't really know this at the time, but you will be doing some sieging later on. You don't need any siege weapons to take out the initial yellow camp. They really won't poke up much of a fight, and they don't have any defensive buildings. All you need to do is destroy a pavilion tent, which is quite easy to do with just any sort of infantry or cavalry at all. Anything that has a sword, even archers could probably take it down fairly quickly. So I'm mostly just massing up my troops here, building some houses. Houses are always nice to kind of help you, build up a larger army, which is always good. And unfortunately, there's not like a whole lot of wood around the camp, so you kind of have to go off in the distance with the villagers, and the villagers will get raided, so just be aware of that if you're building lumber camps far away from the town. Maybe station a couple skirmishers there just to like provide a meat shield so you can get the villagers out of there while you wait for your army to come and deal with any raiding forces. But the raiding forces, from what I could tell, come from the north and the east. So if you cut trees more around like the southwest, then you should be completely fine. The yellow is no threat. They will never raid you. It's just the red army that will be raiding you. Anyway, I'm just about ready to attack here, mostly just like building up some houses and stuff, and I'll be sending out my troops. Alright, so at this point I've built up a sizable army of knights and skirmishers. Not the biggest force of all time, but again, there's not really a whole lot of enemies you're going to be dealing with. Mostly just pikemen, I believe a couple archers, and there will be some legionaries and a mangonel, so just be aware of that mangonel. Don't let it hit in the middle of your skirmishers, because that could really cause some problems. Knights can take it out very easily, though, with no issues. Only real powerful unit here is the Legionaries, which are quite dangerous against skirmishers, but Knights can deal with them pretty easily. The Legionaries are pretty fast. They're kind of like a really fast Teutonic Knight. That's probably the best way to describe them. Lots of health, lots of HP, and lots of damage as well. Extremely powerful unit. I wish they were the Italians' unique unit instead of, what is it, like Genoese crossbowmen, I believe, are the Italians' unique unit. And they also get that anti-gunpowder infantry that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head, but and there's also a captain here that you have to kill, and he's just a really, really strong knight. He'll probably take out a couple of your knights trying to get him down, but eventually it will happen. They also just randomly have a trebuchet. I'm not really exactly sure what the point of that was. Probably just like attempting to make it look a bit more decorative or something. And then you have to destroy that pavilion in the middle of the camp, and that is the objective. I was just trying to be clear there. I'm like, I've killed everyone, why have I not completed this objective? It's like, oh yeah, you have to take down the pavilion in the middle of the tent. it's not good enough that we killed their general. We also have to burn his tent to the ground, because that's just how they did things in ancient Rome, I suppose. So now you will be presented with another objective, and after you complete that objective, you'll be presented with a third objective. But these two don't take all that long, so I wouldn't be too worried about them. Mainly what you want to do now is, for some reason there's more yellow troops down there that I decided to kill. You don't have to kill them, there's really no reason to, and if you're low on forces and your forces are low on HP, it's probably a better idea not to. So at this point, you just want to make more knights and more elite skirmishers. I decided to make a few pikemen as well. They are not necessary. I wouldn't really recommend making them, but you definitely want to have a siege workshop out and maybe have a couple rams garrisoned inside. I also put up a castle. I didn't really show myself doing that, but take my word for it. I did put it up, but I put it up at the wrong side. So if you want to build the castle, you want to put it up over where my army is right now. And the red will start raiding. They are pretty easy to defeat because they kind of come at you piecemeal. They only send like a couple troops at a time. They'll send quite a large amount of troops overall, but they kind of run them in slowly, kind of streaming them in, and your men should take them out very fast, especially if you have a large mass of skirmishers. Should just tear through them. Quite a few legionaries again, but the legionaries fall down pretty easily to knights. All you have to do is kill their general, and their general died so fast I didn't really get to see what his name was or anything. But again, just like kind of a very varied enemy composition of troops that they're sending at me. Some crossbowmen as well. They all die pretty quickly. Just make sure that Attila is not Attila the Hun. This is Goths, not Huns. Just make sure that your main Hun Goth guy and his friend, I'm not really sure what they're called, like Afalth or Alaric and Afalth, something like that. Just make sure they're not in that army, because if they die, you lose, and then you have to revert to your last save point, or start the entire scenario over again if you forgot to save. So this next part coming up, this is actually the last part of the scenario. There is an optional objective as well, to return Athalf, or whatever his name is, whatever he wants to call himself, to his little home in the east. You'll have to fight through a few knights to do that. If you want to, go for it, but there's really no reason to, because it's an optional objective. You don't need it to complete the scenario. And I didn't do it personally, so I'm not really sure what the reward is, but I imagine he probably just gives you a few men, or maybe some gold or something if you do it. Really not necessary. So now what you want to do is go up north, and there will be a legionary castle, and the final thing that you have to do for this scenario is raise the castle to the ground. So remember I was talking about the rams earlier? Yeah, you want to build them now, because I didn't have a whole lot of knights left. I had a few, but not a whole lot. And the rest of my army force was pikemen and skirmishers, which really don't excel at taking down castles. So I had to build up some rams really quickly because I didn't know this objective was coming up. And it kind of took me by surprise, so I wasted some time building rams. So I'd recommend that you have them already. You can't really build anything more effective than rams at taking out castles at this point. So even though rams are slow, they're kind of your only option because you're limited to the castle age and you can't build trebuchets or anything else. I'm not even sure if the Italians get bombard cannons, but if they do, you can't build them. Although, like, with this amount, even though I don't have, like, the most amount of knights, with all those skirmishers and stuff, they kind of do take down stuff pretty quickly. I was able to take out that gate pretty fast, a little bit surprising, and there will be some enemies in here. They also will create units constantly while you're in their base, but they're not too much. And here, finally, raids start coming in, like, 20 minutes into the scenario, or possibly more than that, because I'm playing on a fast speed. Obviously, it's more than that. It's like 30 minutes into the scenario. So those are going to come earlier if you are playing on a higher difficulty. I think I had one raid before this that I didn't show on camera, but it was like 2 longswordsmen in a night, I believe. So they're really not that big a deal. And here I'm just killing off skirmishers so I can have population room to make more rams, and I believe I was also making huskarls or something like that. Anyway, not really necessary because I have plenty of guys, and there's not going to be huge resistance in the enemy campsite. So there is a castle there. Mark my words for it. I haven't shown it yet, I don't believe, but all you gotta do is take that down. I mean, if you want to, you can just sacrifice your skirmishers against the castle and take it down slowly that way if you want to, although the castle will take down the skirmishers pretty quickly. And the enemy will make a couple longswordsmen, I believe, so those can take out your rams over time if there's nothing to protect them. Also, just don't forget to load guys within the rams because it makes them move quicker, which is always nice. And I believe it makes them do a little bit more damage or something like that too. And here I'm just attacking the castle with the skirmishers because, like, why not? The archer pops out of the archer range. Good game, sir. He died very quickly. And here's an actual kind of like legit raid coming in, like 4 legionaries. and a knight, but at this point it's too little too late. That could definitely do some damage to your economy if that came on earlier in the game when you didn't have a whole lot of guys protecting your base, because those legionaries are pretty hard to take down. They're resistant to arrow fire, have tons of HP, so they're kind of going to massacre the villagers. I mean, the town center will eventually take them down. It's not like 4 legionaries can take out a town center, but they can do some damage. But at this point, I win the scenario quite easy, but hopefully some of the scenarios later on will get hard. I'll be doing the next one in the campaign, the third Alaric scenario, probably pretty soon, within a couple days or something like that. Anyway, I'll just show off the score here before entering the video, so just remember, let me know, do you like this style better? Do you like the live commentary style better? And I will do whichever one sounds more appealing. So, the Legionary have a ridiculously high score, because I believe they have unlimited resources, which would kind of explain why that is. But I pretty much destroyed them in unit killed versus unit loss ratio. Anyway, thanks for watching, and farewell.